Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for coming. I should warn those who aren't aware of it, there's going to be about 20 minutes worth of Cllr Society AGM before I will introduce our guests, and they will explain to us, hopefully, the benefits of why we should all be part of their particular proposed unitaries. Before that, can I quickly ask everybody who's a Cllr Society member just to put their hands up, because we need to know the numbers. We have a quorum. That's okay. Excellent. Thank you. We'll probably get a few latecomers given the difficulties of getting here this evening for some people. So hopefully they'll just stroll in quietly and go to the back. Apologies for absence. I'll now whistle through the agenda. I've had apologies from Bob and Ann Harvey, Jeffrey and Gillian Osborne, James Wrigley, William Tannant, Vivian Napper, Philip Cole, Val Mercer and Simon Thompson. Second item, minutes of the 63rd AGM, 25th of April, 2024. Are we happy to agree the minutes? Les, you proposing it? Somebody second? Nick, thank you. Okay. Any matters arising from those minutes? No, good. My annual report, as this is the last time I'm going to be addressing you, I don't propose to reiterate what I've written in my report about the meetings we've held in the past 12 months, the events we've organised, the shows we've attended, the government consultations to which we've responded, nor the planning applications and issues that we've addressed. And if for any reason you failed to receive my report or you would like a copy, please email the Society. You can find the address on our website. And if for any reason, instead, I would like to pay tribute to the diligence, commitment and sheer hard work of my fellow committee members on behalf of us all, and without whom it would have been a very short report. So I'd like to begin by mentioning my three colleagues who will also be standing down from your committee today, namely Cathy, Kate and Debbie. Many of you will know the force of nature that is Cathy Koo. She has been our events lead throughout my time as chair, singly responsible for organising events such as this, our Crabshell Conversations, and our presence at many of the shows being held around the South Hams each summer. She has also been instrumental, along with our membership secretary, Kate Bosworth, in nearly doubling membership numbers over the past 4 years. In that time, without any price increase, our income from membership subscriptions has increased by no less than 95%. It's a significant achievement. Kate has also, in conjunction with our Treasurer Debbie Board, done exceptionally well in increasing the number of you who pay your subscriptions by standing order, so saving their successors a lot of time and effort spent chasing up late payers in the future. And if you haven't already set up a standing order, please do so. Debbie, along with our secretary and archivist, Nicola Fox, has also been a source of sanity, organisational discipline and invaluable advice. The two have, and in Nicola's case will continue to be, your assurance your society will continue to both operate within and fulfil its charitable remit, namely to protect the natural landscape and the built character of the South Hams. Crucial to that is and will continue to be Les Pengelly, who so brilliantly leads the Society's planning team. I have never ceased to be astounded by his knowledge and understanding of planning legislation and the sheer amount of time and hard work he puts in on your behalf. But don't take my word for it. I'm delighted to say Les has been nominated as a Kingsbridge Community Champion 2025. And I here quote the Kingsbridge Town Clerk. In recognition of your tireless work on behalf of the Cllr Society, applying through numerous planning applications to make sure planning applications are adhered to, your diligence and attention to detail are outstanding, and your dedication keeping Kingsbridge a lovely place to live is appreciated. Thank you, Les. It's been a privilege to work with you, and I'm looking forward to seeing you collect your certificate and award in a few weeks' time. Similarly, those of you who have read our newsletters know we couldn't have a better and more knowledgeable environment lead than Martin Fodder. Martin is a former barrister, so like Les, he is more than capable of getting his head around the relevant legislation. And such is his commitment, he's also currently travelling up and down to London on a regular basis to increase his knowledge still further and study environmental law at UCL. And given that Environment Secretary Steve Reed was at the start of this month reported by the Financial Times as saying both the Environment Agency and Natural England will be given clear remits to ensure they are not blocking development and getting in the way of progress, I suspect he's going to be kept very busy on your behalf. Fortunately, our trees lead. Peter Breach, a man who is always only too willing to volunteer to help others on the committee, is also remaining. So thankfully, arboricultural issues will remain in good hands. And Nicola, Les, Martin and Peter will be ably and effectively supported by the two most recent additions to your committee, namely Simon Thompson and Richard Baker, both of whom have also more than a little experience of planning matters. Simon, although now resident here in the South Hams, has unfortunately had to return to Essex today to attend a wedding. But he has in times gone by appeared before planning inspectors to argue against appeals being allowed, while Richard in recent months has on occasion been helping Les with various planning issues. And he was also instrumental in helping to put together the Ringwall neighbourhood plan. Richard has also kindly come forward to replace Debbie as our treasurer, so that at least one of your society's outstanding vacancies is successfully taken care of. Consequently, I'm relieved to be leaving the society in such good hands, but those that remain need your help. Somebody needs to come forward to replace Kathy and organise events. A new membership secretary is required to replace Kate. And the society could also use a new chair, better than I have been, to coordinate all their efforts on your behalf. Assistance is also going to be needed to help to put together the society's quarterly newsletter and update both the website and Facebook page. So, to put it simply, if you want your society to continue to survive and thrive, you need to serve your term. Just talk to any member of the committee to find out more. And finally, and purely thanks to the efforts of my colleagues, I found it both a pleasure and a privilege, at least for most of the time, to serve as your chair. So thank you. Anyway, on to item 5 on the agenda, Annual Accounts and Treasurer's Report for the year ending 31st of December. It's already been circulated, and I commented on the accounts in my report, but does anybody have any questions? No. Could somebody therefore propose the accounts? Peter, seconder. Andrew, thank you. Okay. 6, election of officers and committee. Richard Baker as treasurer, proposed by Debbie and seconded by myself. To be elected, can I have a show of hands to elect? Thank you. Carried. Simon Thompson as ad hoc committee member, proposed by myself, again seconded by Nicola Fox, to be elected. Can I have a show of hands, please? Yep. And the remaining 4 committee members, Secretary and Archivist Nicola Fox, Planning Lead Les Pengelly, Environment Lead Martin Fodder, and Peter Breach, Trees Lead. I propose that we should elect them on block. If we're in agreement, could somebody propose that, please? Yep, thank you, Kathy. And second? Yep, plenty of seconders, Debbie. Okay, hands please to re-elect your committee. Thank you very much indeed. That leaves the last item, any other business. Is there any other business we need to cover? Oh, okay. Oh, no, you can't, because that's going to be far too boring for work. So thank you. Thank you, Nick, anyway. Anyway, on to the real meat of the meeting. We've all heard much about the benefits to both Plymouth and Torbay of bringing the area currently controlled by South Hams District Council within the boundaries of their proposed unitary authorities. But we've yet to hear what the benefits might be, if any, to the residents of South Hams. So to hopefully help us find out, I'm delighted to welcome the leader of Torbay Council, Councillor David Thomas, and from Plymouth City Council, the Deputy Leader, Councillor Jemima Laing, and her colleagues, Councillor Sally Cresswell, the Cabinet Member for Education and Skills. And I believe they're going to start off by giving a short joint presentation as to where we are, how the whole process is proceeding, and then we'll get into the Q&A when all that's been explained. So okay, here we go.
Thank you. You have to bear with me. I'm recovering from a virus and I don't have my entire voice with me. I want to start by saying thank you very much for inviting us. I was a bit nervous when we got the invitation because I think we are all actually in the same situation insofar as something is going to change for all of us, and actually nobody in this room is going to make the final decision about that change. But I think it's very important that we have a conversation about how we've arrived at our initial submission around this. There's a lot going on in local government. There's a lot going on in Plymouth at the moment. And actually, when this first arrived on the agenda, it was kind of, it's going to take a lot of member time, a lot of officer time. You know, it's kind of the last thing we need. But actually, the more that I've got into it and working with Ross and obviously Tudor, the leader, I've actually become more and more excited about what it will mean for Plymouth. Obviously, Plymouth is the place where I live, and I'm a councillor, and I love it. But I completely respect that that's exactly how you feel about the places where you live. But actually, I'm really beginning to see how, you know, if these 13 parishes join Plymouth, there would be definite benefits and advantages for them. But I want to just talk about why we are all here, why we're even having this meeting. So the government's long-term vision, as it says on the slide, is for simpler structures, which make it clear who is responsible for services. I've never lived in a two-tier area. You know, I've always known that one council is looking after most of the things that are pertinent to me and my family, and the government want to make that uniform across England. So it's making a pattern of single-tier unitary authorities across the country. We're not in, neither us nor Torbay are in two-tier areas, but obviously we are neighbours of areas that are. So the government has made it clear that smaller unitary councils need to look at the population they currently serve, and to see whether that is big enough to be sustainable in the future. And the indications that we have had is that Plymouth needs to expand modestly from around 260, 265 that we are at the moment to just over 300,000. And so our initial submission takes us just over that 300,000 mark. But being mindful about not wanting to change the character of Plymouth, nor the places that we are including in our submission. And I think it's important to say something about the character of Plymouth itself. You know, Plymouth isn't a homogenous place. There are distinct areas of the city who would be very clear if you were to speak to them that they are part of Plymouth, but they are in a part of Plymouth which has its own unique identity, which we completely respect and encourage. So I think that's kind of all I want to say for how we are, where we are, and I think Dave is going to talk about the current timetable.
Thank you, Jemima. I just wanted to really kick off and talk about the current local government reorganisation timetable. And if you forgive me, I will refer to that throughout the evening as LGR, because it's just too much of a mouthful otherwise. This has been an absolutely steamrollered approach from central government, and the timescale that we're working to is absolutely astronomical. It does follow a similar timetable for devolution. So you will recall that government brought out a white paper on the 16th of December of last year. And although we had Christmas and New Year in between and we were closed for 2 weeks, we still needed to submit our view on devolution by the 9th of January. So you'll see something very similar here. The government wrote to us on the 5th of February and said, you've got plenty of time on this one. You've got till the 21st of March. Now, it's government's ambition that two-tier authorities will disappear and they will be replaced by unitaries, as Jemima has just explained. And I thought, well, that's fine. Torbay's a unitary. But unfortunately, I didn't read the small print, because the small print actually says, and the map is really useful, because the green areas are those two-tiered areas. And it also says, and those small neighbouring unitary councils will also be invited to engage in local government reorganisation. Engage is quite also an interesting word. Being told how it will be the reality. So we needed to submit, as everybody did, by the 21st of March. And as we progress in this presentation, we'll talk a little bit from Plymouth and Torbay, how we got to actually our presentations. And we are actually sitting here waiting for government to tell us exactly what they will be bringing forward. As we go through the evening, you will hear that there are currently 11 proposals for Devon. I had an email from the Minister advising me that I would know on Monday, the 28th of April, what the government's decision was regarding devolution. A few days later, there was a webinar. In the webinar, the Minister was reminded that there were elections in Devon on the 1st of May, and the response was, well, of course, we mean the 2nd of May. So I'm expecting an email on Friday, the 2nd of May, to tell us exactly what is going to be. The timetable for our area is tentatively April 27 or April 28. There is actually a really complicated spreadsheet with different timetables, depends on where you are. The fastest one coming forward through the line, just to give you some idea, is Surrey. So Surrey needed to submit their interim plans by the 21st of March. They need to submit their final plans by the 9th of May this year. They will have new elections across their region in shadow form by May 26, and they will go live on the 1st of April 2027. So we can see the kind of speed that this is happening. We don't have that kind of detail yet for this area, but if it follows a similar route to Surrey, which are kind of the leading light at the moment, you can expect a similar timetable, but we can talk more about that as we move through. Ultimately, Plymouth and Torbay, we are responding to government's invitation, inverted commas, to a programme of local government reorganisation. As I've said, there are multiple options coming through. I think really importantly is the bottom point on this slide. We are told that all of the pieces of the jigsaw for England must fit together. There can be no devolution orphans, and there can be no LGR islands. So effectively, everything has to fit together as a jigsaw puzzle. And so if we look at Devon, you move one part, the other part has to respond some way or other. As I've said, there are 11 options currently on the table, and most of those don't fit together as the jigsaw that government are currently looking at. But we'll talk more about that as we progress on this evening. Thank you. Back to you, Jemima.
I think you've done my slide there, Dave. I was going to talk about some of the key points to remember, and you've talked through it, but it's fine. And I get that Dave says it's about being told what to do, but actually that's why we're having these conversations, because the preferred option for the government is that we go to them with a proposal and a plan that we've all agreed on, and that is what they want us to do. And yes, I get the timeline is challenging, but actually I've been so impressed with how our officers and also, you know, the discussions we've had with Torbay and indeed the parishes, how quickly and agilely is that a word? I think it's a word. How everybody has responded. And if this is going to get done within the course of one parliament, then obviously there is going to be time pressure on people. But from my point of view, I think, yes, it's challenging, but I think everybody so far has absolutely risen to that challenge. So I think I'm going to hand over to Ross now, I think, because you're going to talk us through our approach. So
yeah, more than happy to. So if you're all right for me just to talk through the approach that we've taken, and certainly I think Torbay have almost, well, not mirrored, but certainly done a lot of the same work as Plymouth undertaken over the last couple of weeks. So we've tried to develop a clear understanding of what we want to achieve from LGR, and I think all of us are aware that it needs to make sense for the whole of Devon in terms of proposals. Certainly, we locally have been meeting with parish clerks, parish and town council chairs, police and crime commissioner, all of the local public stakeholders, just to understand some of the issues that might be arising from LGR. We've also been looking obviously at maps and the population demographic splits and various statistics to try to get us where we are. But of course, what we don't have at the moment is very, very granular detail to start modelling what cost or impact might be, what levels of demand are, and so on. So that work will be continuing over the next couple of months until we get to November. So for us, for Torbay and for Devon, we'll be looking to share information so we can be very clear about what demand currently exists in the county as a whole and how we may address that. Do you want me to just carry on with the government criteria before we get to the options? Oh, right, fine, sorry, I'll pass over to Sally.
Thank you. And before I start, I just want to say thank you very much for inviting us here. I must admit, I did feel very, very apprehensive in the car, and my background, although I'm currently a councillor, my background is 30 years in primary education. So needless to say, I'm feeling quite nervous in this, out of my comfort zone, and I would take up to as well this issue about what is this timetable, this sense of urgency and pace, and it is a difficult timetable. There is no doubt about that. It reminds me very much of being in a position of being a head teacher, and somehow the government used to always introduce something that we had to comment on, made before it actually was implemented, and we had proposals and all sorts of things. So they always used to come very close to the end of term, or else they would come very close to when there was a half-term holiday, and somehow you have to get around this, and I think for me, in terms of, there are obviously very clear criteria here, but I think you have to try and see these things as an opportunity, and problems that come with solutions. I used to work with someone who said, don't come to me with problems, come to me with solutions. And I do feel this is very much an opportunity for us to be solution-based and to actually be working together. And I think most important is actually to do quite a lot of listening. I have, one mouth and two ears. And so therefore, I think today is going to be an opportunity to make sure I use those in the right proportion. So I think, to be quite clear, is that the government has some very clear criteria for unitary government, and obviously the first one is that the proposal should seek to achieve for the whole area concerned the establishment of a single tier of local government. As has been said, there can't be any islands. This is the clear criteria. The unitary local government must be the right size to produce those efficiencies, improve capacity, withstand those financial shocks. If you are in the area where I am, in terms of my cabinet position is one in which I have education, skills and apprenticeships, but under that comes SEND, which has major demands and cost implications, and certainly having a means of being able to work constructively within that area in order to achieve the necessary sufficiencies that are also going to provide the best service. And that brings us very neatly to the next one, which is about unitary structures, prioritising the delivery of high quality and sustainable public services to citizens, and particularly when you think of local authorities having the pressure of children's services, those adult social care services. For me, there's also the skills services, but also the SEND agenda. These are things that are very, very expensive. And how best do we work? So we work on the most efficiency to deliver the best, and particularly I'm always thinking about the best for our children. I think some of the important things, though, is how the proposal should work to show how councils in the area have sought to actually work together in coming to a view that meets local needs and is informed by local views. And I think that this is really important. This whole sort of listening, learning exercise is really important, because the intention is that devolution and local government reorganisation isn't about just doing things to people. It's about making sure that we actually achieve the best for our communities. And of course, at the centre of this is a government that's clearly committed to devolution. So the new unitary structures must support devolution arrangements. But finally, it should be, and we should see this as a positive and grasping opportunities. I'm very much sort of always looking on the positive. Here is something that's going to happen. The changes are going to happen. This is our opportunity to make the absolute best out of them and do what's going to be best for our communities, and we know our communities best. So making sure that we enable that we have stronger community engagement, and that we deliver genuine opportunity for neighbourhood and empowerment within our communities across our localities. And I think I'm now passing on to
Me?
you, Ross. Yes.
We're starting to go through options now. So before councillors talk about some of the options we considered at Plymouth, to just talk about the principles that we considered. So in addition to the government's criteria, we felt it was necessary to have a think about what we were willing to do and what we weren't willing to do, and therefore what should our principles be. So of course, we've been considering how a boundary change could result in close to the population size that the government has been asking for, so we can continue to deliver those savings. Well, sorry, I'll just say there is a lady taking a photograph of the slides. We will circulate them, so we'll make sure you get a copy. So you don't need to take photos if you don't want to. That's all. Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. No problem at all. No, that's fine. So my name's Ross Jago. I'm a council officer. I'm not a councillor. I'm not a politician. So I'm leading the response at Plymouth to the invitation. So I'm putting together the papers, and doing all the research, and building the data models and so on. I work for the people of Plymouth. I'm not a councillor.
So I am a councillor. I thought we were introduced at the beginning, and probably you didn't. So my name's Councillor Sally Cresswell. I am the cabinet member in Plymouth for education, skills and apprenticeships.
Mr. Jemima Laing,
Yes,
who is the
I'm
Deputy
leader of the
Plymouth
council.
City Council.
Councillor David Thomas, leader at Torbay Council.
Just say.
Thanks, Richard. Okay, yeah, so we've been looking at the boundary sizes. So first principle is that the new sort of Plymouth Unitary Authority would need to be financially viable. The second principle for us is that a boundary change should retain the character and identity of Plymouth and any area that comes within its administrative boundary. That's been pretty core to what we've been doing over the last couple of weeks, certainly with the parishes that have sort of come into our administrative boundary, or we propose that anyway. We've taken a view that we need to respect existing unitary county boundaries, which is really a reference to Cornwall, and that a boundary change would minimise the impact on Dartmoor National Park Authority. we believe that we should base our proposal on existing parish boundaries. Now, the reason for that, because of course you could choose district areas or district boards or county divisions. We've done that because parishes are the part of the local government ecosystem that will definitely be remaining and will definitely continue to exist. So we didn't see much value in building our proposal around existing district boundaries. We considered that the boundary change needs to have regard to requirements for future sustainable growth, and our interim plan submission reflected that to quite a high extent. I think it's fair to say. I think it's just important to say now, and I think David and Jemima and Sally have all referred to it. We're on a very, very tight timeline. We've had a very small amount of time to put together what is an initial view, essentially, as an interim plan, an initial view. We've got a lot of work to do in understanding all of the various data at our fingertips to make sure that the proposals we put forward do stack up and are not a risk to the residents of any area, and that's what we'll be doing over the next couple of months. So theoretically, there is a multitude of options to draw some lines on a map, fairly artificial lines on a map. But what we did is we looked at the 6 criteria, we looked at our own LGR principles, and we did take what we had learned through discussions with both parish councils, parish clerks, and all of those people, those public sector stakeholders are referred to earlier. So our boundary options are as follows, and I think I'll hand it over to Jemima just to go through our first option.
Yeah. So before I run through the options, and Sally's going to help me with this, we did actually consider not responding to the invitation and maintaining Plymouth's current boundaries, but the government has emphasised that unitary authorities must be of a viable size to ensure sustainability and future growth potential, and Plymouth recognises the necessity to expand its administrative boundaries to achieve the required scale for future sustainability. So option 1 is what we call the Plymouth growth area, and that's the option that we have submitted. So we're considering extending Plymouth's administrative boundary based on the Plymouth growth area. And this proposal encompasses 13 parishes which currently border the city, including Bickley, Shawprior, and others that you can see listed up there. These parishes contain settlements with strong functional links to Plymouth in terms of daily commuting, housing markets, shopping patterns, children going in and out to school one way or the other, out of Plymouth and into Plymouth. And if implemented, this extension would increase Plymouth's total population to just over 300,000 residents, incorporating an additional 12,000 households and 29,000 people from those surrounding communities. This option represents a targeted and thoughtful approach, focusing on areas with the strongest existing connections to the city. But I want to make it clear that Wembury would still be Wembury, Shawprior would still be Shawprior. So that's option 1. Sally's going to tell you about a couple of other options that we considered before settling on that one.
Yeah. So option 2. So as you can see, option 2 would be the local care partnership, Western National Health Service locality. So our second option aligned to the boundary with healthcare service provision through the local area partnership, Western NHS locality. So this more extensive proposal would incorporate 25 parishes from West Devon Borough Council. That's over half of their 46 town and parish councils, along with 29 parishes from South Hams District Council, representing nearly half of their 61 local councils. Now, while this healthcare focused boundary would create a population of approximately 336,000, just under 336,000, it is likely to present challenges. Despite potentially meeting the government's 6 criteria for unitary government, this option conflicts with known proposals for local government reorganisation elsewhere in Devon, and also with our own principles. So if we look at option 3, which is a Plymouth housing market area. So our final option bases the extended city boundary on the Plymouth housing market area as identified during the preparation of the Plymouth and South West Devon joint local plan, which was adopted in 2019. Now, this is a very ambitious proposal and would incorporate all parishes in both South Hams District Council area and all parishes in the West Devon Borough Council area. Now, our early assessments concluded that this would create an unwielding area for service delivery. And while it could potentially meet the government's 6 criteria for unitary government, it conflicts with reorganisation proposals elsewhere in Devon and contradicts key principles outlined in our report. The resulting authority of around 413,000 residents would be too expansive for effective governance. And I think my personal feeling is that when you start to look as well at the idea that new structures should actually have stronger community engagement for neighbourhood and empowerment, which is one of the key criteria, I think such an unwielding local authority would probably fly a bit in the face of that 6 criteria that the government is putting forward as part of the proposals.
I think we're going to move over to David now to go through the Torbay option. So, David, do you just want to give me a shout when you want the slides? Moved?
Yeah, no problem at all. Thank you very much indeed. So, let's start with a Torbay one. That would be useful. There we go. Fantastic. So I could talk about this one. I can't talk about the Plymouth one for certain. Okay, so we started off as a local small unitary authority, basically there to kind of look after our residents within Torbay. The opening gambit from the government is we need 500,000 people. And the reason you need 500,000 people is because you need to be viable. Well, actually, we are a small unitary, 139,000 people. However, we are the only authority in Devon that have children's services rated as good by Ofsted. We are the only unitary authority that has a groundbreaking health and social care partnership with the NHS, which is our integrated care organisation, which is seen to be the best in the country. And actually other local authorities certainly are envious of what we've got there. And we do have a secure financial position. Now, the thing is, why are we in this position? Because basically, Torbay, and I refer to it as hitting the wall, that was 15 years ago. I've been a councillor for 18 years. 15 years ago, we hit the wall. Now, that's called Section 114, local government speak for going bust. We had some really, really difficult decisions 15 years ago. We had to significantly make cuts. However, we are now seeing the benefits of those reductions that we made 15 years ago. We have made no cuts to services for our residents for the past 2 years, and our council tax increase has been below the 5% cap. Yes, indeed, you heard that correct. Below the 5% cap for the last 2 years. And I think if you do a Google search, you'll probably find that we are the only authority to have done that. So we believe that we are in a viable position, and therefore we put option 1 actually as an option that we want to deliver. Okay, government may say it's not 500,000, might just tear it up. But we think for our community, option 1 works. So we put that in as an option 1. Let's move on to option 2. So we've spoken about how little time we had to do this. But what I was absolutely determined to do was to ensure that we had some community engagement to ensure, and we took over the Princess Theatre in Torquay, and we invited residents and we presented 4 options, and we said to our residents, tell me, first choice, second choice, what is it you want? It was their choice that we actually put forward. So option 1 came out as the residents' choice. We put that down as option 1. Option 2 looks to say, okay, if the 135 is too small, how can we get closer to that £500,000? Sorry, pounds? People. So you're looking at option 2. Now, this is basically 292,000. This is our local care partnership. Effectively, the NHS in Devon is split up into 4 quadrants. This is the south section. This is the section that Torbay Hospital effectively looks after, and it's broadly the catchment area for South Devon College. It came out as the second option with our residents, 292,000, and we have included it in our second option to government. Let's move on, because still we're not getting to that 500,000. That's the wrong slide. Next one, please. Thank you very much. That's the one. So we need to get closer to that 500,000, and we need to create a jigsaw that runs across the whole of Devon. So we spoke to all of the district authorities across Devon, because Ross, are you able to go forward and then come back? Great. Let's go forward onto option 4, because option 4 is basically probably where you start. Yeah, in as much as, well, the easiest way to resolve this is a single Devon council, either with Plymouth or without Plymouth. 1.2 million population, it certainly exceeds the 500,000, or without Plymouth, 950,000. But to be honest, I do not believe that that option on the screen is the best option for our residents in Torbay, because one of the things that is buried inside the inside the white paper is that services must be relatable to place. I ask you a question. If I'm providing services for Torbay from Bideford, how is that possibly relatable? I just don't think it is. And therefore, I personally don't think that this works. Certainly doesn't work for Torbay, and there's plenty of other examples. The district councils don't actually believe that this works, and our residents in Torbay don't believe this works. We included this in our submission to government, but we said that the only reason we are including it is because we are ruling it out. We wanted to be really clear, really specific. We don't believe this works, and we're telling you, government, that we don't believe this works, rather than be silent on it. Let's go back, if I may, to option 3. Now, this one comes around basically by talking to the district councils across Torbay, across the whole of Devon. I'm sure you will have heard of the 145 approach, which is Plymouth as a single unitary, the 4 districts of Torbay, South Hams, Teambridge, and West Devon being as 4. That takes us to about 430,000 populace, and then the 5 being Exeter, East Devon, and North Devon. That is supported by all of the district councils. This actually came out in Torbay as option 3, but it does get closer to the 500,000. You know what? It is going to be that I am waiting for that letter to come out on the 2nd of May, because there is a lot of confusion, and I've learned something tonight, and I thank you, Jemima, for that, because I have asked in meeting after meeting after meeting, where are we in terms of the numbers? And I've always been referred to as to the white paper of 500,000. To hear this evening that Plymouth have been advised of 300,000, that's the first time I've heard of that.
That's specifically for continuing unitary authorities. That's the guidance that we've been given. So not new, so new unitary authorities would have to
Okay, and so
just to make that distinction.
no, that is really helpful, because that basically means that option 2 is probably a player. But I've asked the question in webinars. Ministers have referred to 350,000, but then when you try and nail it down, have taken it back to the 500,000. 300,000 has been mentioned, but again, I can't get it nailed down. And Caroline Volden, MP for this area, raised this very question in the House of Commons with the Deputy Prime Minister and said, Torbay only has 137,000 populace. It is too small, ? I presumed that the answer would come back from the Deputy Prime Minister of the white paper says 500,000. The reply that came back was, there will be exceptions. Now, I don't know if 300,000 is the guidelight for unitaries that are currently established. I honestly don't know if 139 is an exception to the 300, or whether 300 is an exception to the 500. That's why I am really looking forward to the response that we get at the beginning of May. But they are the options that we have put in basically on the back of consultation with our residents. Thank you.
Well, I've just been asked to cover what happens now, which, as David said, we're waiting for our letter. So the department advised us all to expect a letter on, as David said, week commencing the 28th of April. And as we reminded everyone, there is elections taking place in Devon, so that's going to be quite difficult. I would anticipate, David, we're probably going to be waiting until probably next week after next. 6th of May. Yeah, so I think we're going to be waiting a little while. Just on the 500,000, because it is something that's been bouncing around, lots of discussions for a long time. The white paper, the criteria that we've had, has been very clear that there would be some flexibility. More complex solutions may be considered, but may require additional work. I think we've seen ministers certainly dance around 500,000. We've seen speeches both in the Lords and in the Commons suggesting that 500,000 is a target for new authorities. And I think one of the ministers was flabbergasted because the sector has essentially been asking for a number like this for a long time now. Of course, they've given one, and none of us are happy with it. But I think that there will be some flexibility around 500,000 for a unitary, because certainly when you look at places like Manchester, which is made up of several unitary authorities under the elected mayor system, almost all of those are below 350,000, and all London boroughs are also under 400,000. So I think reality is there will be some flexibility, and it will really depend on how we come together with a pattern of local government in Devon. In terms of next steps, well, we are expecting that feedback. I think I'm expecting much more limited feedback than many of our colleagues, but we'll wait and see what it says. Certainly, both Torbay, Plymouth, Devon, and the districts will be coming together over the next couple of months to make sure that we're sharing our data and being clear about how we're engaging with each other and so on. We'll certainly be doing further engagement, as I'm sure colleagues will from the rest of Devon. We will be moving to put our submission in on the 28th of November. And of course, we'll have a number of governance hurdles before that point. We'll expect a decision on LGR in the new year. I think, again, December 25 is probably pretty ambitious, much more likely to be January, February. Once there is a decision from government, it is their decision, and it will be government that will be consulting with people in areas. So they will be undertaking resident consultation along with wider consultation around local stakeholders. We'll be seeking to understand our issues that we've got around our proposal over the next couple of months, along with colleagues from around the Devon local government system. And I think it's now, Richard, time to move on to questions.
I think it is indeed. So thank you, everybody, for all your contributions. I think we're a little wiser about what's happening. If you can hang on a second, I've got a couple of questions here, and then I'll throw it to the floor, if I may. The first one is from Fenella Russell-Smith. I don't know if she's come, but I'll ask it anyway.
She's over the back.
Okay. Would you like me to read it for you, Fenella? Yes, okay. May I ask if the absorption of South Hams Council by either Torbay or Plymouth, both very urban metropolitan councils, will result in the rural village small towns being subsumed by a council that is largely uninterested in preserving rural culture and affairs? The larger populations of the city of Plymouth or the urban sprawl of Torbay will take precedence over the less densely populated countryside that is the charm of the South Hams. The result will be money channeled from the South Hams to either urban areas. I would strongly vote against this ridiculous idea, as would my family and many local friends. So if we can begin by picking up this point, and I'm going to throw it at Councillor Jemima Laing, if I may. Back in January, your leader, Councillor Evans, told you and your fellow councillors, we need to make a powerful case for our own existence, and a powerful case will be to resist any threat to us being put out of business as a council and subsumed into a more rural authority. So can you understand why many of the residents of the 13 South Hams parishes you propose will become part of Plymouth might not wish to be subsumed into a more urban authority?
Yeah, absolutely. I get the reticence and the nervousness about it, but it isn't our intention to change the nature of the places that we are hoping will become part of the wider Plymouth Council at all. And as Ross says, you know, the parish councils are still going to exist. And part of this process has been, we've had a parish council conference already, which was very much a listening exercise to listen to concerns and listen to worries about this process. And I can't say it strongly enough that it's very much about us learning about what those 13 parishes would require. It's not about us trying to urbanise those places at all. As I said, when I talked about that first option, it makes sense in a lot of ways, because a lot of people in those places come into Plymouth for all sorts of things. And likewise, you know, we have, especially around education, we have children going to Ivy Bridge. You know, it's a very fluid to and fro. And that proposal made the most sense, but it's definitely not about trying to Plymouthize those places that we completely understand. And we've heard loud and clear as part of the work that Ross has done and the parish council conference that we had, that, you know, that is a concern, that this word subsume, etc. I don't apologise for the fact that, you know, we are concerned that if Plymouth became part of, if Plymouth doesn't expand in the way that we've talked about this evening, then it would cease to exist as a unitary authority. And actually, I think there's a very strong argument for the fact that these 13 parishes would have the seat of power actually geographically very much closer to them than they do now. The district councils are going as part of this proposal, but the top tier Devon, you know, that seat of power is in Exeter. Well, if you become part of an expanded Plymouth, you're just down the road. So it isn't about cannibalising or subsuming at all. That isn't our approach. That isn't what we want to do. That option one, in terms of us having to expand, makes the most sense for a number of reasons, both for Plymouth and I think for those areas where something is going to change. I reiterate that point I made when I first started. Thank you.
Is that Plymouth is quite interesting, because it's not really like some sort of it's very often referred to as a village, Plymouth Village, and interestingly enough, the ward, the area I actually represent, the centre of it is in fact referred to as Stoke Village. And it is within Plymouth, I think probably within many cities, but within Plymouth in particular, there are very distinctive sort of like local village type communities. So in a sense, there's a real kind of like understanding, and I certainly understand exactly what you're saying. You know, the last thing you want would be to lose that wonderful, particular, special identity that you know, if you think of, say, for Totnes or whatever, and all of those places and those parishes, and I think the sensitivity, and that would be really important, that whole conversation. But I think that sensitivity, as far as Plymouth is concerned, of understanding, is because we have within Plymouth so many areas within Plymouth which are very much like little villages, and even referred to as villages when we actually talk about them and how the community talks about them.
Can I just answer from a Torbay point of view? So you spoke about consuming into a larger authority. Certainly any conversations South Hams or Teambridge direction, and I'm already on record as saying I cannot imagine that we would be allowed to call an expanded Torbay into South Hams and Teambridge. We would be absolutely looking at a new unitary of some description. It would come with a new name. It would be a new organisation. It certainly wouldn't be something that was consuming the other areas. And your final comment, or my final comment to your remark, was you said you would vote against it. I'm afraid, unfortunately, none of us have any opportunity to vote against it. You voted that earlier last year.
This one's for Councillor Thomas as well. Were the South Devon Council to come into being the option for, or your third option, as initially proposed, it suggests there would be between 65 and 73 councillors, each representing between 5,890 and 6,615 residents. By comparison, each South Hams district councillor currently represents 2,860 residents, less than half as many. Given I doubt our district councillors think they are currently underemployed, although some are here and they might contradict me, will representation suffer as a consequence?
So once we know exactly the kind of numbers that are involved, we are told that there will be a boundary review. Certainly, if you look at the kind of numbers of councillors involved in the system across the whole of Devon, it'll probably be I would imagine a quarter of what's currently there. But of course, we have got a two-tier system at the moment. So those numbers will have certainly reduce. However, it will follow a piece of work from the Boundary Commission. And my issue is, I genuinely, you know, we know the timetable is really tight, and we spoke about that previously. But my experience of the Boundary Commission is an 18-month piece of work. So unless they bring in additional capacity to get that through within the timescale, I just got my own doubts.
Can I add something there?
Yeah.
Just in terms of Plymouth, we work on the basis of 3,300 people per councillor, and I think this initial submission would envisage, I think, 10 more councillors. Yeah, so it's not vastly different. Yeah.
Which and the majority of those 70 councillors would all be representing very much urban areas, with just 10, which is the current number, that represent the 13 South Hams parishes. So they're going to be singularly outnumbered, and given politics the way it is, priority will obviously be given to where.
I don't think that's true. And also, what I really want to emphasise that this is about the running of services and less duplication, and making it clearer who's responsible for what. You know, this is about who provides your refuse collection. It's about who looks after vulnerable adults. It's about who provides children's social care. I don't think our council works in that way, where we give preference to one geographical area over another. I don't think anybody in Plymouth at the moment, which, as I say, does have distinct communities. We're not a homogenous place. We're all Plymouth, but as Kean would say, we know what we are. Devonport would say the same. So would Plymstock. and Plimpton, and their voices aren't diminished by the geographical part of Plymouth that they're in. I don't think it'd be right or fair to say that.
John Stuart Mill talked about the tyranny of the majority, and with the preferences and interests of the majority taking precedence over the interests of the minority. I think people feel there could be a danger of that happening in this instance as well.
But we don't want to enter this process on that basis. That's why, we could have put in our invitation, not spoken to anyone, not had our parish council conference or any of those things. Those aren't box ticking exercises. They are listening exercises. And we are, I think, between us really beginning to understand more about the needs of, I wouldn't deny it, a community that's very different to the one that I represent at the moment. That doesn't mean I can't learn and understand what those communities want and need.
Okay, I'll take some questions from the floor. Nick, you ask first, but can we get a microphone to you first, please? Les, could you take? Yeah, that red switch you need.
Hello, can you hear me?
Is that coming through?
Hello. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Nick Cotter, member of Follaton Society, resident of Kingsbridge, and an agitator to protect Bantham, which is now in good hands. I've sat here listening to this, and at the very beginning, I can't remember all the detail and all the exact phrasing, but there's something about right size. And yet I'm hearing a debate that we don't know what right size is. We're hearing that we're working together, but I'm seeing the two councils that appear to be on the same slide, their logos together. They don't seem to be working together on the solutions because there is no jigsaw connection. All the Plymouth proposals do not match the boundaries of all the Torbay proposals. So I'm confused. I really don't know whether all this work done by councillors and officers is actually going to be seen as connected.
Who would you like to answer that question, Nick?
No problem. Quite happy to go first. So, question of the right size, it is the government that are setting the size, and we've rehearsed the argument over the size and exactly what it's be. I think we do have different views from Torbay and Plymouth, absolutely, and we're not here basically shying away or hiding away from those different views, but we have actually put together a set of slides together. Why? Because the fundamentals of what government are asking are the same, whether it be Torbay or whether it be Plymouth. We've come to different solutions, but for the ease of trying to explain where we are when we're both invited to a meeting, it seems to make massive sense for us to work together and try to present effectively two slightly different answers to the original question.
Yeah, I would second that. I mean, it's not easy and it is confusing, but what we've tried to find a path through it, and as Dave says, our proposals are not vastly different, and I'm pleased that we are able to sit here today with a joint set of slides and that the discussion is ongoing. That is part of this process. It's a continuing conversation. What we have submitted is an initial submission, and I think once we've had our letter back from government, and also once the local elections are out of the way, because that's probably going to have an impact on proposals and submissions, and it might have been more useful to be having this discussion once that had happened. I don't know, but we can have another discussion about it once that's the impact of that is clearer. But I think I don't think we're massively at odds in what we're talking about. And I'm glad that we can sit at a table and have joint slides or whatever, because that is symbolic of how we are trying to work our way through this together.
Kathy, did you want to ask a question? Then I'll work my way around. So,
my name's Kathy and I'm a member of the South Hams Society, and I was born in the South Hams, and trying to compare areas of Plymouth with areas in the South Hams is a non-starter. You know, there's no guarantee. You haven't consulted with us in the South Hams. I haven't seen the consultation from Torbay either. What guarantees have we got that you're going to put our interests, you know, give them equal weighting? And also, you said you didn't even have to consult, which frankly, you know, you're an elected councillor. There is an election. You did. You're an elected councillor, and on May the 1st, there's a whole nother party coming. And, you know, they may well change things. So I don't think that it feels like you're coming here and telling us how you're going to carve it all up between you. There's no consultation here for us. You know, this is a free country. It feels like we're being just top-down government telling us what's going to happen. We don't have a choice. We don't have a say. Well, I personally take a very dim view of that, and my vote will reflect that on May the 1st. Thank you.
Could I just respond insofar as I didn't say we don't have to consult. That's not part of the process for us at the moment. The government is going to consult once we're further down the line in the timetable that Ross talked about. And I understand your frustration in terms of how the process is going to be played out, but we don't have a say in it beyond us putting together a proposal. It's not our decision. I didn't mean that to come across in an arrogant way. We're in the same position. We are all. That's the point I was trying to make in this room. No one of us in here will make that decision.
Okay. But so I think, you know, you've got a representation from Torbay and also Plymouth this evening. We were invited this evening to basically have that open and honest conversation, and that's what we're here to do. You know, and you know, I can't and I won't give you the answers that you would maybe like me to give you, but I will give you the honest. That's all I can do. I can be honest, and Jemima has been exactly, you know, we're telling it is exactly as it is. And my apologies if it's not landing, you know, but it's, you know, it is exactly where it is. And you know, I think, in all honesty, try to speak for Plymouth as well. This is a very dangerous position now. I might get a flat wrist. But at the end of the day, we are, Torbay and Plymouth are urban areas. And the reality of working with a bigger or a smaller rural space will bring about very, very different challenges. Yeah, but what doesn't change is there are still residents living in the locations that require the bins to be emptied, the potholes to be sorted, children's services and adult services. They are the biggest things for a unitary authority. 80% of the money from Plymouth and from Torbay goes on children and adults. What a unitary does provide as a single council, it does provide responsibility. It does provide a one-stop shop. So as a resident, you know exactly where the buck stops. The buck stops with your unitary councillor. It's not a case of, oh, I'll ring the district. Is it a district function? No, it's a county function. Oh, I'll ring the county. Oh yeah, but that little bit is district. Yeah, and that's where you go. So I do. That's one of the benefits of unitary. It is that the elected members in a unitary, you know, okay, but the elected members in that unitary authority, they are responsible, and you do have the right, of course, to change that with your cross.
Could I just add here that what I think is really important is that we don't have all the answers. We haven't come here with all the answers because we just don't know. We know that eventually something is going to happen, and government will eventually opt for an option or whatever, because devolution is high on the agenda and what they were actually elected on. But I think what's really more important and really important about this, and I've been sort of like taking notes and listening, is those anxieties and concerns that that people have here, and taking those away, because I think that's really important, especially when we get into the idea that there'll be some sort of like a rural and an urban kind of, you know, many of the challenges and issues that people who live right across, whether they're in rural or urban environments and whatever, have the same sort of challenges. And I can give a very good example of that. It would be about special educational needs, which is an area that I have I have a responsibility with. We could talk about this, I expect, but certainly when I first became a cabinet member, we had a silent special educational needs protest. It wasn't really very silent, and parents with their children and carers with their children actually came to Plymouth, and they came from, in fact, wasn't just Plymouth. They actually came from areas right across Devon and also Cornwall to actually protest, and interestingly enough, from all sorts of, obviously, both rural and urban settings, with the same real big anxieties and concerns as far as their children were concerned. As it turned out, I was and it sort of happened this way, I was the only councillor in the whole of both Devon and Cornwall who actually, because they'd come to Plymouth, who was actually there and spent a long time with some of our fantastic officers you'll have across lots of local authorities, actually listening to parents, and these are the sort of like key issues which will be an issue for parents, whether they're in a rural area or whether they are actually in an urban area. But I would stress that I think this is actually both a listening exercise and, most of all as well, a learning exercise as well, because we need to go away having taken on board what you are actually saying. This is really important, because if we are going to actually achieve communities and greater involvement and greater, which is the intention, then we need to actually be seriously listening to the needs of all of our communities.
Thank you, Sally. Jackie first, and then the gentleman behind Jackie. Sorry, you have.
So I'm actually a county district and town councillor, and I'm based here in Totnes. And at county, just for people who might be not aware of this, because of the elections coming up next week, at county, what they've done is they've had consultations. I'm the leader of the Greens on the county, so we've been having consultations and just basically saying, well, let's just come up with the useful information for all the others that are doing their, sort of consideration of bids. But what they've said is that then, until the elections are over, then they will actually start listening to what might be a good, the view of the county. So they just basically give the information, and that's what they've said, and that's what was sent in on the 21st of March. But what I've been raising, and I think this is quite an interesting opportunity. You know, you mentioned opportunities, and I think that's something we maybe should be thinking about, is that every pothole is actually mended by a commissioned third party. Nearly every service is a commissioned service. And what I've asked is, well, how much would it cost, or how much could we save if we actually brought all the services back in-house at the point of the change? Because it's a real opportunity, because all the contracts will have to be reconsidered and thought out. And even just doing all that costs a lot of money. Whereas services back in-house, really using our really talented officers, who have often been more like, well, computer says no, because I don't know where the crew is today. So potholes get missed, and that's the simplest ever. But even like SEND and all of the adult social care is 80% again in county too. That's the 80% of their budget, which is absolutely massive. And again, it's because so much of it is third party commission services. And I think we're spending a lot of money on expensive officers, and I don't begrudge them that. but I think we should make better use of their, well, yeah, well, we won't go there too far, but I think it's, we should be making use of their talents and their expertise and their knowledge, because all they're really doing is just kind of picking up the phone and passing on complaints. And when we brought the waste services back in house here in South Hams, and it was really desperate over the COVID, because that's when it really hit the fan that we'd actually gone out to private. I must say, I never voted for that. I voted against it, and I voted to get this back in. It's really come back in smoothly. And, how could you, in the first instance, when we were trying to increase the recycling, pay for the same amount of money for greater recycling and all the rest of it? The only small point that was going to be lost was the wages that the people were getting given. So we had all this really problem with staff, etc. And suddenly bringing it back in-house, we had better management, better career opportunities, more enthusiastic staff, even in many cases, the same guys. And it makes sense. And I think, having witnessed that and seen that we're getting better value, I think, if we're going to do the unitary thing, I think, it'd be really interesting to see whether others would be interested in looking at that model, looking through that lens, because otherwise I think we're going to just get even more chaos, and the costs of all the recruitment and redundancies that are going to go on anyway. Let's try and make sense of it.
Did you want to say something?
Yeah, thank you very much indeed. Sorry, 2 points really. You said you were going to look at the LGR when the elections are over. However, as a Devon County Council, you still would have submitted your proposals on the 21st of March. And I understand you will get your letter from government at some point soon. But the substantive point of what you raised, in Torbay, that's exactly what we have done. So we have actually brought all of those services back into house. We've created a company called Swissco, wholly owned by the council. All of our jobs are commissioned to Swissco. That means we control the timetable, we get things done. Our recycling rate, just to give you some idea, the best it's ever been was 41.9%. And that was, probably 13, 14 years ago. We're just waiting for it to be confirmed, 41.5% this year. So it's still slightly under the best it's ever been, but it's come up a huge way from where we were before, when we were commissioned out through Cllr, and we were down at 28, 29%. So it's a marked improvement.
Steve Molyneux at the council here has done an excellent job as well since they've brought recycling and stuff back in house. So just give a shout out to him.
And
sorry, yes, Jemima.
Just very quickly, things like refuse collection are already in house in Plymouth, and in terms of children's social care, for instance, we are really looking at how we can change things there around our budget, because it is one of our highest spending areas of the council, and a lot of that is because we rely on private provision of residential care for our young people. So we at the moment are going through a process of creating our own in-house residential care. We're starting with hopefully 3 properties, and then we will expand that. But that is very much about taking back control of that arena from the private sector and creating some of our own provision, because it's better for our children, which is the most important thing, but it's also much better for our budget. So that's, and Ross talked earlier about data, and kind of that's all part of the process at the moment in terms of trying to work out what services would be needed by if our submission moves forward, and that's very much part of that. But that's the way that we operate in large chunks of what the council does.
John.
My name's Kevin Clark. I'm a member of the Follaton Society. As you can gather from the accent, I'm not local. I only moved here a couple of years ago. To me, the clue's in the name, devolution. Since coming from London down to here, South Hams is devolution, local control. This is just centralisation going up. The question I want to ask is, what's in it for me? Because I help out at Kingsbridge Food Bank, and I've been told that the council are not very well. They haven't solved the solution. They need new premises. Now, if we can't do that at a local level, what's going to happen when we can be swallowed up in a much larger unitary authority? Will our voice just become even lower?
Does anybody want to take that?
Yeah, I'm quite happy.
Yeah.
You want, sorry. Yeah, no
Okay,
problem.
then I'll speak then.
Thanks, Kevin. So, I mean, actually, you spoke about two issues actually, devolution and local government reorganisation, and they are two very different things. But because they were in the white paper together, they understandably, get talked about together in the same sentence. But devolution is really about that mayoral combined authority. Yeah, it is about that wider, and as you'll be aware, certainly Plymouth, Devon, Torbay. Our view is that a Devon and Cornwall approach to that mayoral combined authority seems to ring a lot of merit, a lot of sense, a lot of true reasoning there.
You did say originally we weren't going to have them there when you were promoting a combined county authority.
So
It's different.
there is, so what? Yeah, and but what's happened is the goalposts have changed. The goalposts have changed significantly because in the devolution white paper, the amount, the kind of powers that are passed down to an elected mayor are very different to what we spoke about previously. It opens up all of the infrastructure for transport, for example. Elected mayor effectively would get to they have the pot of money for Devon and Cornwall. They would decide whether they're going to put a new road in, or whether it's going to be a new rail line, or whether it's going to be a new ferry service. But it's those decisions actually being made locally. And that's how that kind of does feed into LGR. But the two are very different conversations. Watch this space.
Yeah, I'd add that. So we didn't, Plymouth didn't join in the level 2 deal because actually that was a very different proposal to what this current devolution proposal is. And I think it's important, they are very different, but getting LGR right in terms of having all the unitaries, then proceeding through to devolution is why this process is happening. And I'm very up for a mayor, a combined authority mayor, because that's where money and power is devolved to a local area in a way that isn't happening at the moment.
I think when you start to think about this strategic mayoral authority, which would be the devolution end of that, if you look, for example, at Manchester, in which there is real power there and the real devolving of power in order to be able to just bringing things back in house. Well, all these B buses that now go around Manchester and very interesting, and Greater Manchester. And one of the interesting things about that is that also Greater Manchester has, because of with a devolved authority, the skills budget and such, which would be absolutely considerable. One of the things in Manchester, they actually have the Manchester Baccalaureate, specifically looking at those areas in Manchester where so the Manchester Baccalaureate has many of those within it, has the sort of specific IT and creative type of skills and such, which is quite key to Manchester's economy. In the same way as if you think about us in the far southwest, and the sort of skills and such that we would be looking at as particularly are those blue skills, but also those green skills, because we do have that large blue-green economy, which is absolutely so key to all of us.
Sorry, can I add one last thing? Because no, he did actually say what's in it for me. So could I just answer? I didn't answer that. I would repeat what I said earlier. Actually, there's something about streamlining of services, of knowing who is the person that you need to contact about pothole, a bin, or whatever. But actually, the parish councils will still exist. You will still have a councillor. If not Kingsbridge, we're not. But what? Well, Well, I don't. No. I think this would be less red tape because, well, no, I've lived in London too, but I think that it's. I think I get the reticence, I get the nervousness, but actually there really are benefits to having one authority to whom, you know, that we are accountable to you. There isn't layers, but your parish councils will still exist, and your councillor and the council will still be guided. Well, we've been listening to them. No, we've been
If we
listening to them.
can not keep butting in, please. Thank you.
Too, I won't butt in.
Okay. Justin, and then we'll move the.
Justin Hark, South Ham Society member, resident of Slapton, countryside campaigner, general pain in the butt. I'm just curious on, just to echo Jackie's point, which is, firstly, South Ham's running South Ham's is also fairly disastrous in so far as their investment decisions, the waste recycling, etc., etc. And so what I don't hear from, I suppose from Torbay, I hear from it a little bit more, which is the excitement of having 500,000 council taxpayers, the extra budget, the economies of scale. All you guys go on about listening and consultation. You sound just like, question time sort of virtue signalers. You sound actually quite excited about it, except that Torbay is bust. And so therefore I'm looking at the cash cow that is South Ham's riding in to help out Torbay. And the only thing is the history of the services is much more linked to Plymouth. The waste ends up at the MVV plant in Devonport. A lot of the road services are seconded out from Plymouth. They're not from Torbay. And yet all I hear is, oh, we're going to consult, we're going to. I don't hear anything exciting about, oh, a lot of money here could appease a lot of problems and a lot of services could be streamlined. All I hear is the council employee at the end, I can't remember your name, but, is sort of certain resignation of, oh, this is the card that the government's given us and we're going to do
Justin,
this.
if you read the Plymouth document, it does say it will improve their council tax base by 5%. Taking
for them, but I didn't really hear anything for us or the excitement.
No, sorry, come in because actually, I think listening is actually a really important part of this. I don't think that makes me a virtue signaler at all. If I came in here saying this is what this, any vision in terms of, well, because yeah. It's just. If you're going to keep, sorry, if you're going to sneer at me, it's very difficult to have it. Well, you have just done that, and I just think that that's unfortunate because we really are at an early stage of the process, which I think we've talked about and emphasised, and it is important that we listen to people. We don't know everything about your areas at all, and our parish conference was really important in that respect, to listen to concerns about what we're talking about. And I can tell you, Tudor said, what can I finish what I'm saying?
Justin, can we please?
Is it okay if I finish what I'm saying? Thank you. So it isn't about, building power blocks in Nosmea or any of those things. It is about, yes, there is the council tax point. That's helpful for us, but also, lots of people who live in the 13 parishes that we're talking about come into Plymouth and enjoy a lot of services that Plymouth City Council pays for the theatre, the box, the cultural offer that we have in the city. And actually, I think I said at the beginning, and maybe it's because I'm not 100% well and I haven't got a very strong voice this evening, but actually when we first started this process, I thought, oh, this is a pain. Why are we doing this? But actually, I'm really beginning to see the benefits. And I said that very clearly for us in Plymouth and for the 13 parishes in terms of simplifying, streamlining. Sally often talks about some friends of hers in Wembury who have to take their if they want to go to the tip, I can't remember where you said it was, they have to go somewhere else. You know, these are simple things. They may not be exciting or sexy, or I'm not sitting here getting massively animated about, but they are the things actually that matter to people and make their lives easier. And those are very clear advantages that we are seeing as part of this process. And I'm sorry if you don't think I've been enthusiastic enough. I think I've come here, well, I'm on leave, I'm not very well, but I wanted to come here. And as I said, we will come back and have more conversations, particularly once the local elections in Devon are over, so that we know what that landscape looks like. And I see this very much as part of the process, the start of the process. And I don't want to come in here saying, this is what's happening, although it is what is happening. It would be very arrogant of us not to want to listen to what you've got to say. And I'm surprised that you're sort of sneering at the fact that that's what we want to do.
So Ben. No. Yeah.
Speak a bit louder.
Yes. Okay.
So
brief points if we can.
So Ben Gabbatas, South Ham Society member, place in Kingsbridge, but also Buckinghamshire. Buckinghamshire's gone into a unitary authority. Two large conurbations there is obviously Wickham and Aylesbury, and it could easily, those could be separate unitary authorities. The similarity is that, you know, to get from Buckingham to South Bucks, where I am, is probably 2 hours drive. Same sort of thing in Devon. You try to get from Salcombe to Holsworthy or north of that. That's a good 2 hours drive. It does really feel as if we're here between 2 or 3 big beasts and us in the middle, and that's absolutely fine. My background is a research analyst doing the pre-research for London Docklands and Cardiff Bay Development Corporations. I've been involved in some of the largest projects in the country. I appreciate that Plymouth has a fantastic future ahead. I could see it as a Commonwealth Games bidder, etc. Torbay is obviously its own conurbation, and you know, will absorb Newton Abbot, and I can quite see that. But the rest of us really, I think, and the sort of risk minimisation almost needs to stick together, and the rest, you know, Bucks has just gone to a unitary authority without making any divisions. It hasn't got a big enough beast, although Wickham and Aylesbury could define themselves. Plymouth, it certainly can do. Torbay is great because you've come from a position of having gone bust. So you're coming from, you know, really gritty, and you're a unitary authority. And so far as I know, has still got the finances sorted. So that's good for all of us here that, you know, we've got 2 unitary authorities that can stand up. But the delicacy of local authority finance, as we all know, is very precarious across the country. And, you know, in terms of risk minimisation, creating other unitary authorities, I think, is highly risky. And if this is seen as more as a process, so the first bit of the process, okay, we have to do what we need to do for central government to say we'll create these authorities, create 3 or 4, Exeter, Torbay, Plymouth.
Ben, have you got a question? Sorry.
Well, what are my questions? So these numbers are based on, you know, if you just, so those are based on people, but what about aggregate council tax bands? I mean, would that be a completely different way of segmenting Devon? Because obviously within South Hams, Kingsbridge, Dartmouth and Totnes, which I call the quad, and you might include Modbury, you've got some of the most valuable real estate. And in terms of council tax banding, you know, this has all been done by population. You know, we would stand as quite a strong centre against the urban conurbations at either side of us by the council tax bands. So maybe I haven't got a question as such, but certainly things to observe. And you know, we're very passionate about Plymouth. I think Torquay and its history, you know, it's all very distinct, but I just don't think it should be eating up South Hams at all, and the rest of Devon kind of needs to stick together, I think, at this point. So questions.
If you could pass the mic to the lady there. Thanks, Ben. Cheers.
Thank you. I want to echo what the last gentleman said about carving this up in a geographical way, because it is very one-dimensional. Actually, economics, population, demographics, that all needs to come into consideration as well. But I'm trustee, along with Jackie Hodgson, I'm a trustee of a youth work charity in the South Hams, and we run several rural youth clubs across the district. Two things I want to mention. Firstly, I haven't seen tonight South Hams preferred option here. I've seen presentations from Plymouth and I've seen presentations from Torbay, and I think the elephant in the room right now is, where is the South Hams preferred option? Where is our this district's and why are they not represented on the panel tonight? Because I absolutely want to see.
If I could say, the district councils decided on the 154 option, and our district council went along with going in with Torbay as part of the 4. So they've already, and they had a debate here some time ago, and that's what they've put forward.
Okay, well, it might have been nice for them to be here to listen to people.
Well, there are some district councillors here tonight.
I know, I'm sat next to one, and
Yes.
I've been talking to her all night, and I know Jackie very well because I've just told you I'm on the Board of Trustees and Trade. My second comment is actually directed at Sally. You said something earlier that the services across urban and rural areas are very similar, and you mentioned the Sen as being one of them. Unfortunately, the opposite is true to be said for transport, and transport in the rural area is one of our biggest issues. And you said yourself that we don't know anything about your area. Well, I'm going to tell you about rural transport and the deprivation and isolation and loneliness and services, and how it affects youth services and how it affects older people and the disabled, because that is a big disparity between the urban district and the rural. And across the South Hams, rural transport across Devon is in a really critical condition. You know, bus services being cut, rural roads not being maintained. And I could go on and on. So there are several differences, and that's probably what you're feeling here tonight. The difference between living in a rural area is a million miles away because of the population, and so services suffer. And when you see a youth service in Totnes under threat of being closed this week by Devon County Council, that's why people don't believe that they're going to get representation if they go in with Plymouth. And I'm sorry not to see South Hams District Council here tonight.
Well, can I just say that, I just want to say about the youth services. That's an interesting point. So you're saying you're not being served by Devon at the moment. That's very clear on that point. So I don't know why you feel so wedded to staying in the current scenario, because you've given an example of where you're being failed. And I absolutely will take that away and think, I don't think I said I don't know anything about your area. I mean, I come to Totnes a lot. We don't all live in bubbles. I do know people. Well, okay. Look.
Excuse me, you're without the microphone now, so
Can I just come back on that, and also on Justin earlier, because we're talking about economies of scale, yeah, and 500,000 people does bring in a huge increase in the economies of scale. Certainly from a South Hams point of view, South Hams is the district in the whole of the country that has the largest amount of second home owners in anywhere is based here in South Hams. So the additional monies coming in to the local council on the back of second home council tax being doubled into South Hams this year is huge. But well, okay, my apologies, coming in from the South Hams, maybe going into county, but that's a separate issue. But that rurality is the key, because the reality is, as a unitary, with children and adults being the primary drivers of the budget, and we know how that is consumed in an urban area, without having the additional expenses of being able to get from A to B, and the amount of time it takes a social worker or a care worker to go from that side to the other side. In an urban area, it's probably just round the corner. In a rural area, it's going to be one village to the other. That takes time, which means they can't fit in as many people as they would have been able to do in the urban area. So they need more people, and that also takes more money. So it's absolutely not lost on me that the rurality, and one of the things that we have asked, and indeed Southampton Council have asked, is for the breakdown of the financial figures from the children and adults per district across Devon to be able to give us some idea. And at the moment, at a county level, just before the kind of PERDA situation, I understand that this council was advised that they didn't have that granular detail at the county. So it will be that granular detail that really helps to put anything together. Thank you.
Thank you. Anne Wilcox, and I'm Harford Parish Meeting, and my colleague John Howell. So we're a small parish. You haven't got the population. Harford, very important place, but you didn't have the population up on the board. It's around about 76 people. We are wholly within the national park, and I'm really quite disappointed that it's not seen as an opportunity to change the current status quo. I might be quite controversial and I might say the wrong thing, but there are parishes that are split between the national park and outside of, and option 3 from Torbay is the only option I've seen that includes the whole of the national park. To me, it seems quite logical, where the precept money, the money comes from our council tax that goes to the authorities, Southampton District Council at the moment, but if within the new changes, if the national park was taken as a whole and put within a boundary, whether that's Torbay, whether that's Plymouth, but then the planning moved away from the national park and went with that authority, I personally think that would be a benefit. I think the national park has got a struggling budget, that it hasn't got any money coming in. It finds it difficult, well, from our experience, to deal with planning issues. But if it was to be taken away from the national park, it would also make it far easier for us to live in the national park and not to have so much controversy with the national park. There's a lot of wins to be had by it, in my personal opinion, living in the national park. And yet it's nowhere's the only one I've seen. But if Torbay had option 3, it leaves no room for Plymouth, and the jigsaw doesn't work then, does it? But there's got to be a plan somewhere to take that 14% of Devon and include it as a whole and make a change.
And actually, you're not the only person to raise the national park with me this week. I was talking to somebody only yesterday about all of the opportunities that exist around the national park with the right planning team in place. That doesn't mean that you just litter the whole place, but it does mean that there are opportunities there. But they seem, the word that was fed back to me yesterday was, they seem to be stymied.
It's something certainly I know Ross has spent a lot of time thinking about. It's definitely a priority, because it's not something we're ignoring, because it's very tricky. And whether you take a slice or you look at a small part, or our proposals have never envisaged the whole thing. But it's, I mean, Ross might have more to say, but it's certainly a very big bit of the work that he's doing is considering the governance around that and the impact of that. It's not straightforward, as I'm sure I don't need to tell you. It's very tricky.
Excuse me, sorry, but no microphone, no speak, please. Robert.
I, for one, am delighted that the Southampton Society have organised tonight, and I appreciate why we've only got certain key players from around. What I think has come out to me is that you are saying ultimately that the whole of Devon needs to be tied up as one complete jigsaw. I've heard nothing that is actually going to provide the glue for that from any of the people here tonight. I'm sure that is my question. Where do we go from here? But before I get on to that, what I feel is absolutely necessary is that the missing people in the room, such as South Hams District Council, who've given their views, and Devon themselves, will have views about how the whole thing's got to be pulled together. But the lack of cohesion of pulling things together has become blatantly obvious to me from the comment tonight. We won't know what is going to happen on top down until the 2nd of May. So arguably, you've done the hard work to date, but actually it's a new ball as of the 2nd of May. Then I think there's a very real problem of getting the right people from across the unitary, officers and councillors, the right people who have the capability to make it work. I doubt that that is in place at present. I doubt there's been any real thought given to it. And I find this is a massive gap in, if I was looking at it from a business point of view. I think we are heading towards total disaster on the manpower front going forward with scrapping once the 2nd of May has been announced and you're all fighting for your own lives.
Well, there's no election in Plymouth, so
why not? Well,
I'll tell you why not, because we elect in thirds and this is our fellow year.
We have no control over the elections.
No, but what I'm saying, no, you said it will all go to pot after May the 1st, but our
well,
submission,
it will, because you'll be in your own
Robert.
Well, but the rest of them aren't in your same bubble.
Huh? Oh, the person over there has been waiting a long time. She'll come back straight back to you after.
Sorry, to answer your question or partially answer your question, the hard work has not been done. The hard work is still to come, to be honest. I'm sure Plymouth, like Torbay, have allocated additional resources for LPO. We certainly have, recognising that this is a huge piece of work. We don't have the, we probably have the skill set within the council, but it means they're going to have to do something else. So we have allocated money for this to take it forward. Likewise, within Torbay, there are no elections in Torbay this year. That's not because they were postponed. It's because we have all-out elections, which means we have elections every 4 years, and we're 2 years into our system. The same as at Plymouth, they operate in thirds, and this is their fallow year. So there's no jiggery-pokery with the elections here on either the Conservative side or the Labour side.
There was at county council level though some time ago. Georgina, please.
Thank you very much. I'm district councillor for Totnes. I just wanted some clarity about housing numbers, because I think there's been a lot of concern amongst residents that because housing numbers have obviously been increased so much by the government recently, that the South Hams could potentially become a bit of a dumping ground for housing numbers for both Torbay and Plymouth. And, you know, we've got very high housing numbers predicted for here already. And it has not escaped our notice that Plymouth's plans are sort of to take in the largest of the South Hams developments, so Sherford and Wembury, and also the Freeport, which obviously skews our housing numbers, because our housing numbers have been subsumed to a certain point by Sherford, which could potentially mean that even more housing will come to South Hams. It would be great to get some clarity about that. If you think that we're going to be absolutely free, we're going to have our own housing numbers, and Torbay and Plymouth are not going to begin to move their housing numbers into South Hams, because obviously, or not obviously, possibly, land is more valuable here, and house prices will be higher. So developers will look at this land with, you know, with more enthusiasm. So I think it would be fantastic if you could allay those fears here. Thank you.
I don't know if I'm in a position to allay those fears. But I mean, we've just had a big announcement in Plymouth in terms of our city centre and creating at least 10,000 homes in our city centre. So that goes some way towards our target. But I mean, I would reiterate what you just said at the parish council conference. It's not about building, you know, tower blocks in beautiful parts of the South Hams. That isn't the intention of any of this. And again, I think it's one of those questions that we're not particularly in a position for. I don't want to say something which would turn out not to be true. This is still very early stage submission, and I get that that's a concern for people. But as I say, you know, we've got plans to around the targets that we've got, which talk about developing bits of Plymouth that, you know, it's very unusual for a city centre to not have. I think we've got a very small number of people that live in our city centre. Other places have thousands upon thousands of people who live in their city centre. And that is certainly a focus for us at the moment. But I wouldn't want to say something which turned out to be incorrect, because it's not. I don't have a definitive answer to that question, and I would just want to be honest about that.
Plymouth have also dropped out of having a joint local plan with us, but equally, if I understand it correctly, there's going to be a strategic planning authority under the auspices of the combined county authority, and they will be able to allocate from the overall number that the whole of Devon's got to build, where in Devon they get built. So I suspect, given developers do think they can make more money here, building unaffordable houses for people to come and retire in, we're going to see a lot more building here, whether we like it or not. And notwithstanding the fact we supposedly have 60% of our land being protected landscapes. However, there is a clause in the National Planning Policy Framework that says, if necessary, you can still build on protected landscapes. Anyway, sorry.
Certainly housing numbers in Torbay, we know, you know, the government have increased those numbers. We know what they are. Exactly the same in South Hams. Those numbers will not disappear. It's not as if a case of, you know, any widening. Those numbers will stay. Certainly, you know, it's also a mixture of accommodation that is required. So within Torbay, our affordable housing options sit at only 8%. Yeah. And therefore is a huge requirement for affordable housing. Now, the reality is, if we just spoke about the cost of land in the South Hams, no developer is going to want to put or afford to. We're not going to be able to. No one's going to be able to afford to put affordable housing there. We've got a big project going on in Torbay at the moment called Homes from Hotels, which we're basically looking at brownfield sites, which are hotels that are either on their last legs or beyond their last legs. Maybe they've had a spurious fire, and we're on our third project. And just to give you a little bit of heads up, which is probably I shouldn't talk about this, but the reality is we will be taking a paper through council probably in 6 weeks' time, where we're looking to invest £20 million into that scheme. We've already invested 8 million. So what we are looking to increase that to, it'll be almost 30 million into affordable homes, which puts using those brownfield sites. It may well do.
Sorry.
Hello, I'm Sam Penfold. I'm a district councillor for Malden, so I border on Torquay. I'm also a member as well. So first of all, I do want to say that Dave does represent the district, the 145 option that was put forward. So he is speaking for the district council, and we did all unanimously vote for that 145. But I want to say this is a really bum option, and it's happening to us, and we're being squeezed really from Torbay, from Exeter, and from Plymouth. We're poor South Hams. We're not poor, but we are unfortunate. Okay, we're being squashed. Okay, so I understand the rationality of the unitary in terms of combining and simplifying resources, even though I'm incredibly sad that we're losing our district council and we were given no choice. Okay, so it's definitely the Labour government. This is happening. It wasn't in your manifesto. It's happening to us. Okay, right. Sorry, that's my political bit over and done with. However, we know that changes like this cost money, right? They cost money. So can you talk to how this is going to be paid for? What about the selling of assets? We have assets around us. So what's going to happen? How is this? It's going to cost money, a lot of money to do this. Okay, so we want you to talk to that, I think. Okay, and then the other thing I'm concerned about is I'm really concerned about the parish councils, all the work that they do. I think there's going to be a lot more asked of parish councillors. You know, they're voluntary. You know, we can't always fill all the councillor places as it is. So I'm really concerned that they are supported and helped. And I don't see that being talked about enough at the moment. And there are some areas which don't have parish councils. So Torbay, I think, Dave, you've got a town council, but there are areas which don't have parish councils. So sorry, thank you.
So just to answer directly then, we've been told that there will be no money from central government to pay for the reorganisation costs. Those costs need to be consumed within our net proposals, which need to be submitted by the end of November. I think parish councils will have a significant part to play. Certainly within Torbay, we only have one town council. We have no parish councils, but parish town, they have the same legal definition. Someone's going to shoot me down in flames if I'm wrong, but I believe they have the same legal definition. We only have one town council in Brixham, and therefore it does seem slightly at odds that if LGR goes through, or when it does go through, there will be no kind of very local representation in Torquay or Paignton, and I think they will be the I'm looking across at the wider Devon, and there are, I did have a figure, I don't know if Ross has it, is it across Devon, is it 100 and it's close on 200 parish councils, might even be more. Yeah, okay, it's 320. Okay, I know it's an awful lot, but across Devon, I think those Torquay and Paignton would be the only areas that wouldn't have a parish, which means you're probably looking at a town council for Torquay or Paignton. Yeah.
I don't have anything to add really. I mean, Dave's right about the money. That's a question that we've asked, and that we keep asking, because, you know, it's a cost to the council, and this whole process will cost money. There's an interesting point about parish councils and support for parish councils. That didn't really come up at the conference, did it? But that's an interesting point for us to raise with them the next time they meet, in terms of outlining what support they would envisage that they might need in whatever comes out of this process.
Can I ask you both, when you get your letters on May 2nd from the government, will you be putting those in the public domain, or will we not know what's going on for some time?
So I'm quite happy to answer from a Torbay perspective. I'll leave Plymouth to answer from their perspective. So what I understand is that there will be a letter coming to each authority in Devon. Government do not intend to publish the letter, and at this stage I do not know if there are any restrictions around it about when it can be published or when it can't be published. All I can tell you is that Surrey have had their letter, and I spoke about Surrey really on because they're on the fast track, so we're kind of watching what happens in Surrey. Surrey have had their letter, and it is not yet in the public domain.
So does that mean basically you will all be progressing without residents really knowing what you're progressing till November?
I can't believe that to be the case now.
But you can't say that it won't be.
Maybe the officer's going to help us all out.
So the information that we discussed with the department was that we would all receive the exact same standardized letter. So we expect to receive that letter in the next couple of weeks. They are not publishing it. It will be subject to FOI. I'm not sure why we wouldn't just publish it, but you know, I guess we have to wait and see what's.
Can I submit an FOI now? So you've got it.
I mean, I think it's, yeah.
It would be bizarre for us not.
It would be bizarre for us not to. We've done quite a lot of this in public anyway, so I don't see why there would be an issue.
I think in terms of the kind of goodwill or whatever, being as open and as transparent and such is really depending on what any legal restrictions are. But I think the openness and transparency of this is actually really, really important. And sharing that information is actually really important if we are going to want to try and I realise that, you know, there are people are not happy with this, but if we are going to move forward together, there is no way of moving forward in any way together if we aren't actually open and transparent and honest with each other.
Ross, did you want to say something quickly?
Yeah, just really quickly, because we've been talking about the letter as though we are expecting a decision from the government. We're not going to get that in the next couple of weeks. We are not receiving a decision from the government. We are unlikely, in my view, at least, to receive detailed feedback on any of the options that we put forward. So,
how will you be able to develop a proposal for November if you don't know which way you're to travel?
Let's see what the letter says, but certainly my view would be don't expect too much detail. It is not a decision point. The government have been extraordinarily clear with us that it is not a decision point. So I just want to temper expectations slightly, Richard, if that's okay.
Thank you very much.
LGR reorganisation on geographical structure is something of a red herring or a function. This isn't really the case that form should follow function. And haven't we got to have a debate on what the function of local government should be? And even more specifically, shouldn't we have a debate on how it's going to be funded properly to escape from the funding crisis we're falling into? Why don't you guys go back to central government and say, we're not going to play the ball unless you tell us about the money?
Yeah,
I'm not sure they're going to be able to do that.
Well, can I say that? Well, or the other option is that we will be forced down a road that we've had no part or no say in. So, well, then yeah. But no, but I think I take your point, but actually what we are responding to is an invitation from the government. We could sit on our hands and do nothing and wait to see where the cards fall. But that might not be to anybody's benefit. And if you're invited to take part in something, I think you would be irresponsible not to respond to that invitation. And so that's why we're doing what we're doing.
I'm just going to indulge myself and ask one last question of David, if I may. Exeter City Council made the important point that if localities are drawn too wide, it risks loss of community identity and cohesiveness. And should the proposed South Devon Council of Torbay, Teignbridge, West Devon and South Hams come into being, it's going to encompass an area of almost 2,800 square kilometres. And that's larger than counties such as Dorset, Derbyshire, Cheshire, Staffordshire and Nottinghamshire. Do you not think there's every probability that a community drawn that wide, combining the urban acreage of Torbay with the predominantly rural remainder, would lack both identity and cohesiveness?
Yes.
Thank you. It has to be said, this is all being forced on these good folks by the government. And ultimately, it doesn't really matter what they say. Angela Rayner's going to say what's going to happen. So, but if I could say thank you very, very much to them all for putting up so well, with not the friendliest audience they're probably ever going to face. Thank you.
Can I just respond to that just very quickly? I get it. I do understand. I can't imagine being in the position you're in. I really can't. But that's why we want to be having conversations with you to really understand, you know, that's what the point you've made about parish councils is really useful, because that's not something that people have raised with us. And I've made notes all the way through the evening, and those are things I'm going to go away and get answers to. And I really hope to meet you all again and have you know, answers to some of the things that we couldn't answer this evening. This is very much done in the spirit of collaboration, and as far as we can do that, that's what we want to do. I mean that.
Can I just say, I just want to say,
Kathy, no microphone.
Yeah. Yeah. No, get that. They're going to exist. They're going to exist, and the district council isn't. So Oh, yeah. Thank you. So we're covering from a break. Thank you. No, thank you very much.